Alright, so this is the 10.6 notes, and we are finding angles in right triangles today using trig. So the very first thing we're going to do, just like yesterday, is we're going to circle our reference angle. And what does that mean? Well, we are looking for F. So I'm actually going to put X right there, and then I'm going to circle it. Because X is what we're looking for. It's an angle. And then now I'm going to label the two sides that have numbers on it. All right? So we did this yesterday, except when we labeled it, we labeled the side with the variable, the X, and then the side with the number. Now there's two sides with numbers. So this one has the hypotenuse, which is across from the right angle. This is more of what we did yesterday. And then also 10 is way on the opposite side of the triangle from F. So that's why I'm circling F. It's my reference angle. It's on the opposite side. We do not use the adjacent side, so I'm not even going to label it because you don't need it. But we have O and H, so I don't know if you remember, but some old hippie, it means that we're going to use sine. So now, once you have labeled your triangle and figured out, all right, I have O and H, you're going to look back up here, and you're going to figure out which one of these only has O and H, and that's where I got sine. Okay, so you are using sine. So sine, and then here's how this works. When you are looking for angles, you're going to use sine inverse. So you're going to write it like this. It's a little bit different than yesterday. So sine inverse of my opposite over hypotenuse. What's opposite? We already have it labeled, so it's easy. It's 10. My hypotenuse, 23. And that's what X equals. So your angle is going to equal sine inverse of 10 over 23. You type it in your calculator and you're done. So I don't know if you guys remember what we did yesterday, but it's a lot easier than yesterday. So anytime you're looking for an angle, you're going to use the inverse. So sine inverse. So I need everyone to look at your calculator because you have to know how to put this in your calculator. Look at the top, make sure it's in degree. And then look in here at sine, cosine, and tangent. And you're going to click second sine to get sine inverse. And then you're going to type in 10 over 23. Alright, so we're going to continue to follow this process. F is the angle we're looking for. So I'm going to put an X there because we are looking for an angle. And then A and H. Alright, so we have A and H labeled, and you look up here and you're like, alright, which one am I going to use? Ah, this one only has A and H, so caught another hippie. I'm using cosine. Alright, and then notice it says you use the inverse to find F. So the cosine inverse of this, A over H. Alright, A is 15, H is 32. So this is much easier. It takes the whole step out of figuring out, do I multiply, do I divide, how does that work? And so you just do second cosine to get the cosine inverse. 15 divided by 32. And you should have 62.0, so just 62. Oh, I never put the answer for this one before. 25.8 degrees. So this one rounds, it's like 62.0. In Delta Math, it asks you to go to the nearest tenth, but for this one, 62 is fine. All right, next one, still looking for F, but you're given different sides now. This is the opposite, and this is the adjacent. Notice we don't have the hypotenuse, so you look up here and you're like, ah, tangent. That's what I'm using. Tangent equals O over A. So we are going to use the tangent inverse. Anytime you're looking for an angle, you want to use the -1, the inverse. So X equals tangent inverse of 6 over 25. How do I know it's 6 over 25? Because O and A. Yeah, O and A. And that's what I put in the calculator. So inverse tangent 6 over 25. And it's going to be 13.5 degrees. So it's going to be a tiny little angle. But that makes sense because 6 is so much smaller than 25. So that's going to force that angle to be small. All right, let's go down here. And then we're going to fill this in. So you want to use the inverse function to find the indicated angle. I want you to circle this. I want you to pause the video real quick and label this and figure out, are you using sine, cosine, or tangent? All right, so you are going to look at x. That's the angle you're looking for. And then you're like, all right, I don't have my hypotenuse, so neither one of these is going to be an h. Because my hypotenuse is over here, there's no number on it. But then there's one that's close to x, and then there's one that's far away from x. The one that's far away is going to be the opposite. The one that's right next to it is going to be adjacent. So if that helps you, like, think about it and remember that, use that. And then you look up at the top of the page, which one doesn't have the hypotenuse? Well, not sine, not cosine. It's got to be tangent, O over A. So use the inverse function to find the indicated angle. Tangent inverse is going to be, so because your angle is always equal to tangent inverse 51 over 23. When I see kids make mistakes, it's mainly, a lot of times it's because they switch the numbers. All right, the opposite is 51, so that goes on the top. The adjacent side is 23, so that goes on the bottom. So second tangent 51 over 23, you get 65.7. All right, let's keep knocking these out. So now we have y is the angle that we are looking for, and we have two sides that we're given. We do not have the adjacent side, so we are not going to put an A on this triangle. Remember that A is the leg that touches the angle. We do have the hypotenuse that's across from the right angle, and we do have the opposite side. We know it's opposite because it's way over here. It doesn't touch y at all, and it's just the furthest side from y. So we are going to use some old hippie. We're going to use sine this time. So x is going to equal the inverse sine. It's inverse because we're looking for the angle. So the difference between yesterday and today is today we're using the inverse. Yesterday we just used normal sine. 43 over 48. Make sure if you're using sine or cosine, your number on the bottom has to be bigger because the hypotenuse is always the biggest number. For tangent, that's not always the case because it's just opposite and adjacent, and those can be any lengths. But sine inverse of 43 over 48 is 63.6 degrees. Oh yeah, you're right. I just like to use X, I guess. Yeah. Just used to it. Alright, last one. So C is the angle we're looking for. 35 is the hypotenuse. And then 30 is right next to C. Notice 30 touches that angle. It's not the opposite side, so I'm not even going to write that down. And then I look over here and I'm like, oh, the only one that doesn't have the opposite side is cosine. So cosine inverse, because we're looking for the angle, of 30 over 35 equals 31 degrees, because it's like 31.00. All right, that's it.